Welcome to Good Game, your no BS insights for crypto founders.
For example, Optimism right now doesn't have the proof, but they've always been like, they have said that they are going to implement the proof. The story is correct. People know where they are going, right? The intention is there, right? And I think we did not do a good job at that. We should have simply clearly said that, guys, here is what we have built. This is pragmatic, but this is a sister chain to Ethereum. Maybe we should have done that better.
If you don't have haters, you're not doing anything right? So I think what you're doing, it may not sound good to the community, but I think for Polygon itself, it probably makes more sense. Looking for your next startup idea in crypto? Check out our request for startups list and get inspired at alliance.xyz/ideas. Welcome to Good Game. Today, we're going to be bringing on Mihailo and Sandeep from Polygon. There's been a lot of FUD around Polygon, and I don't know why that is, but reading through the tweets, I've seen a few reasons. One is, they might be not Ethereum aligned and they're value extractive. They pay a lot for BD. They jump onto different narratives just to get some attention. And then
some people even think they ran out of money.
Yeah. And, it's the constant FUD. And, typically it's because there's bag holder bias, right? People are holding tokens from a competitor and they want their narrative to win over Polygon. I mean, there's many reasons why, but what we want to do here is just address the FUD and then really talk about some of the cool stuff that Polygon is bringing to the market. They recently, I'd say about 5 months ago, they launched Polygon CDK, which is a chain development kit that allows anyone to spin up app rollups, and they provide the infrastructure to do so. And you've had startups like Kanto, IDEX, ImmutableX that have deployed their own CDKs. The other one is the Ag Layer announcement that they announced a couple of weeks ago, which is like a unified bridge ZK proof aggregator. I think that's going to be really cool too. And we could talk about that. But what are some things that you're excited about talking to with Sandeep and Mihailo?
I'm very curious about the current state of Polygon ZK EVM. They've been working on this for a while. They have one of the most beefed up ZK teams in the whole space. And yet when I look at L2fees.info, Polygon ZK EVM is actually currently more expensive than the optimistic rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism. I'm curious why that is the case and if they have plans to dramatically reduce the fees. That's one thing. And I'm also obviously very curious about their upcoming token rebrand. So Imran, to your point, I think a lot of FUD actually just comes from the fact that the token hasn't really moved, whereas all the other ETH betas have moved up a lot, right? Like Arbitrum, OP and Lido, like all these tokens have pumped a lot in the last few months, and Polygon hasn't done much.
People are angry at the token.
People are very angry about it, and part of that drives the narrative. Well, I mean, I would say way more than part of that. It's like almost all of negative narrative comes from the poor token performance.
It shows you that Polygon has a community, right? Like people want the token to go up. I mean, it's similar to Chainlink. If you think about it, if you notice this past bear market we're in, everyone was talking about Chainlink, like the price of Chainlink and why is it going up? And it's stuck at $5 or whatever it was. And it shows you that Chainlink has a community and people want Chainlink they want to prophesize all the things that are coming down with Chainlink. And so similarly, where Polygon is that they have this incredible lineup of product releases that are coming out. And I think the narrative is just getting started for them, it seems like.
Yeah. So I'm very curious. People have been talking about the token rebrand from Matic to POL, P-O-L. And I'm curious if there will be new utility built into the new token, and also whether or not there will be new airdrops, token incentives as part of the new token. Because we've mentioned L2 beats in the past, which is the ranking of the layer 2s in terms of their TVL. Polygon ZK EVM actually doesn't have a lot of TVL, but other ZK EVMs, like ZK Sync, for example, have a lot of TVL. And relatedly, recently, Manta also went live with like $1.3 billion in TVL.
Yep.
And the reason behind all these is very simple. It's just the token airdrop.
It's yield.
It's yield. Token airdrop is basically a form of yield that is randomized. It's a yield lottery.
Yeah.
So people go to these layer 2s in anticipation of token incentives, but Polygon today doesn't have that.
Yeah, you could argue that's, they've already released their incentives and it's done. But to be quite frank, I think with the rebrand to Pol, we could probably see more and more incentives coming back in the pipeline.
Polygon right now actually somewhat reminds me of Solana a year ago when there's so much FUD around it. Price doesn't go up, but the fundamentals are pretty solid.
Proving over time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally building out the end game of what Vitalik posted a few years back about ZK rollups being the way that scales Ethereum. In order for Ethereum community to get there, they have to first use optimistic rollups, fraud proofs. Then the next one up is ZK rollups, and they're building that.
I want to add a quick note on the Vitalik endgame. So basically, Vitalik thinks ZK rollups are the endgame for scaling Ethereum. Last week, I tweeted something that I thought was pretty harmless. I said Solana is the final form of blockchains. I'm sure you saw it, Imran. And
yes, I had people share that tweet with me and say WTF question mark.
Yeah. I think the two end visions are not necessarily conflicting with each other. So you can have something like Solana, which takes advantage of modern parallelized hardware as the layer one, right? And at some point, if that layer one gets really congested, you can have ZK rollups on top of it. The two are not necessarily conflicting. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in 2 to 5 years. And until then, within the next 2 years, let's say, I think it's never been clearer to me that there will be a barbell situation in blockchain scaling. On the one end of the barbell, you have all these modern parallelized high throughput blockchains. And on the other barbell, you have rollups.
Or app chains via Cosmos.
App chains, exactly. Either using Ethereum or Cosmos that can also optionally use Celestia or Egan DA or whatever as their DA layer. And it's good enough that we talked to Julian on our last pod. Basically, using the separate DA layer, they're able to reduce the transaction cost by close to 99%.
$200,000 a month.
$200,000 a month.
That's sizable. And that's based on their current traction.
Yeah.
Another 10x is like a huge order of magnitude improvement.
So just to avoid any doubt for audience, I'm a massive bull in both ends of the barbell, both the monolithic and the hyper modular architecture.
It really just depends on what the founder is building. Like, you got to allow them to figure out what stack they need and what to build for. Some argue...
I've been thinking about this, Imran. It's more than about the tech. I think ultimately what matters is the personal affinity. So
bagholder bias is what you're saying.
Bagholder bias, but also...
The religion. That's the moat. We talked about it.
Yeah, exactly. So when a new dev comes into the space, in crypto, they will need to pick a chain, right? And they're going to look at their friends, or they're going to look at the influencers on Twitter, and they're going to pick the chain that they feel affinity with, right? So if their friends are already on Ethereum, more likely than not, they're going to use Ethereum. But if they like, let's say, Anatoly on Twitter and feel more affinity to Anatoly, they're going to use Solana.
Yeah. It also goes back to language too, right? Because some people just prefer Rust. They just like the Rust community and they want to use Rust.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Rust was actually a really good...
It's a good choice.
Yeah, it was a big sell to new developers back in the day, at least. So separately, I'm also aware of many developers who are into Move.
Yep.
They think the Move language is a cool language. That's why they're doing Sui and Aptos.
I think primarily for Move, it's the security aspect of it, right? I mean, it's much more secure using Move than having to, say, use Solidity.
Yeah.
So people feel more comfortable building around the Move ecosystem from that perspective.
But we're digressing. Back to Polygon. They have one of the most beefed up teams in ZK. They have what is analogous to the OP stack or the superchain, which is Polygon CDK.
Probably order of magnitude better though, because you have the Ag layer which we'll be talking about too.
And the Ag layer, which to me is pretty analogous to a shared sequencer, because it tries to solve composability or interoperability across the different rollups. They're going to do a token rebrand, and there's a lot of chains that are actually using the Polygon CDK. You mentioned Kanto. I'm aware of Manta, for example. There's obviously Immutable X. All these are really big chains.
Let's bring on Sandeep and Mihailo to talk more.
Do it.
Today we have both Mihailo and Sandeep from Polygon on to speak about the new Ag layer that they're about to release, or they have released, but want to get deeper into what this means for crypto at large. Two is, I know there's been quite a bit of talks around Polygon CDK infrastructure. We've seen startups like IDEX, Immutable X, Gnosis Pay, and Kanto. They have all released CDK chains. So talking a bit more about what is the true meaning behind what the CDK infrastructure can offer. and then diving deep into where the future is at for Polygon and the Matic token. Before we get started, Qiao, do you have anything else that you would want to add?
Yeah, I've seen a few things on Twitter I'm super interested in, but haven't been able to find detailed information. So, for example, there's apparently a token rebrand. I'm curious if with that, will there be a new utility for the token, and whether or not there may be some token incentives, airdrops. So that's one thing. The other thing is I've heard Polygon proof of stake is transitioning to a Validium. So for those who don't know, a Validium is a layer 2 on top of Ethereum that uses a separate DA layer. So a DA layer that's not Ethereum. And so layer 2s like this are called Validiums or Optimium. And Validium basically refers to a layer 2 that uses ZK, whereas Optimium refers to layer 2s that use optimistic rollup. But so I'm curious about that as well.
Yeah. So, over the past, few years, Polygon has always been on my radar, obviously from all the things that you guys have been building. But then you've also accumulated a lot of, I wouldn't call them haters, but a lot of, people that put up FUD against Polygon. And, I want to take this time to kind of like address some of this because, after obviously I've seen the work that you guys have done for a very long time. And if you really just read the docs, you could see clearly where you guys are headed. And I clearly see the future of what you guys are building. But I want to address some of the FUD because it's kind of annoying me now. So I'll get started with some of the FUD here, right? And Mihailo and Sandeep will have this as an open, frank conversation.
Yeah.
And if you and you could bring this up yourselves too, whatever you like.
No. You let's start this way. You tell us what kind of FUD you are hearing because there might be multiple ones, but which one you want to discuss? We'd love to.
We will explain why is it true, and we'll explain why is it true.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first FUD is the Polygon's BD team has been incredible, right? But then also hasn't brought in the impact that it has, right? And that could be for multiple reasons, whether you've paid a bounty of some sort to bring on these builders to build on your ecosystem, and that hasn't really panned out. And they, bring up many companies that have kind of done this. So maybe start with the BD side, obviously, Polygon is known for BD, but people are saying that the BD hasn't really brought in the traction that it's looking for based on the incentives that were paid out.
Yeah, we can discuss that. Anybody who's thinking that, I would just say that ask first of all, go and check which are the top blockchains by daily active users, right? And if you remove Binance chain, which obviously has the bigger user host from there, right, from a 100 million plus users exchange, which chain has the most on-chain users? So that's on the macro level, but also I would say, and I think this is about some of the brand partnership, but I'll come to that.
Yeah.
But let me talk on the adoption side. Let's take the various sectors. DeFi, who are the top 3 players? If you remove Ethereum again and BSC, if you want to include. But otherwise, if you want to include BSC, Ethereum I'm not counting because Ethereum is at another level. But it's next you would see Arbitrum, Polygon, and BSC, right? Then let's take gaming, absolute dominant number 1, right? Then let's take Deepin. For example, these days Deepin is this. Rank 1 is Solana, but do you know that where are the other big protocols of Deepin building? Recently, Demo has raised $12 million from CoinFund.
Demo.
Yeah, Demo is on Polygon. There are at least 15 different protocols that are building on Deepin. There are multiple big protocols who are working in the stealth mode and are coming out, which are building the base Deepin infrastructure, right? And you will see some of them. Then this is the third one, right? Let's take NFTs. like by volume NFTs. Who's the Ethereum is number one, Solana, and who's the number two? Like Solana and Polygon constantly going up and down between them. That brand partnership, that first of all, like Polygon is actually paid a lot of money, like people would say, right? But actually our whole BD budget for the last 2 years is actually it would be like, it is double digit millions, but early double digit millions. It's not like very big. If you see like what is the total budget of Polygon BD in 2023 is like less than $2 million.
So what you're saying here is that the work that you've done on the BD side has amounted to some, maybe it's not direct, but indirect value capture through, high amount of daily active users. You have protocols that are being built that are all on Polygon. You have DPIN, like Demo and others are all being built on Polygon. And so all of the BD work that you've done has indirectly or directly have supported and grown daily active users.
I want to come up with a good term for this, but let's say now we're talking about aggregated blockchain, like aggregated adoption, like, or cumulative adoption of all the protocols, if you see. But what I'm also saying about brand partnerships, people say, right?
Yeah.
So let's say Reddit is how much? Like 30 million NFTs, on-chain NFTs on Reddit. But why you don't see it? Because those brands essentially don't want to allow massive speculation on these things so that they don't get checked in by the regulators, right? And if you see for a protocol, like, again, like, let me not take the name of some of the layer ones, like, let's say you have some NFTs or meme coins trading and they have like $50 million volume on chain, let's assume. But the protocol is making a revenue of $100 out of this. Compare that to Polygon, where Polygon like on daily basis makes like 100K daily volume. Like as a protocol volume for revenue, how do you care whether that's a speculative NFT or non-speculative NFT? Like I'm just saying that the glasses that those people who apply, they are the ones, they only want to see how much speculation is happening on this. If the but speculation has nothing to do with the protocol revenue. Protocol revenue is when somebody is doing a transaction, they are paying for gas, and that's going to the protocol.
Can you expand on what Polygon has done with the Reddit, Nike, and Starbucks? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know the crazy traction that Polygon has had with those big name brands. Expand on what you've done with them.
Yeah. So for example, Reddit today, like I think there would be like hundreds of subreddits where their mods can issue NFTs to their followers. And there are total 30 million holders of these NFTs on chain. This is not like some centralized wallet that they are seeing. This is on chain transactions. But people don't see it because those NFTs are not selling at crazy amount in the market. But you can take them to OpenSea. I think the aggregate volume would still be around $60 million, but they have not kind of like provided a very simple interface that I click and I list it into the market. So only the sophisticated users can actually withdraw. They take it to the OpenSea and then sell over there. There are multiple communities over there. I don't track the category directly, but it's like which cat, like Hellcats or this particular kind of category on these NFT kind of sites, which are very popular there. Similarly, on Nike has a very big program called Nike Swoosh, right? So I think it has like hundreds of thousands of followers. People buy those NFTs and buy and sell NFTs and do a bunch of stuff. And there are multiple other brands like which do decent volumes over there, which like even I don't have like back of my hand like direct those numbers. Like I want Polygon to be a part of this new Web3 or this new internet that is being created. Like I say it, Web2 is trustful internet. This is trust-free internet. Thing like strategic mistake from our side is that actually like end of 2020, like it always happens in the end of the cycle. In the end of the cycle, all these casino things have happened and community demands the real usage, right? So we went very strongly into the real world and tried to get a lot of real world adoption. But now it's a good lesson learned. Like, real world adoption, nobody cares.
Well, Sandeep, I think people care. It's just that on Twitter, the public square of crypto, people only care about speculation. But I think outside of crypto
but
Twitter,
I think that's what decides the narrative of a project, right? The Twitter, like, that casino players and all that exactly only defines the narrative of the project.
Yeah.
And I'm also telling that, if that is the learning, then so be it. You will see. Let's do that. Let's see what we can do over there.
Imran, what are some of the other FUDs?
Some of the other FUDs, I think this is older FUD, but Polygon POS isn't Ethereum aligned, right? It's a sidechain that doesn't derive value to Ethereum. But obviously with Polygon CDK and others, you could definitely see that. But if you want to address that, you can.
I think now we have the ZK rollup like fully launched. I don't think like people have that doubt. But that Polygon POS, once it has the ZK proofs also added, I don't think like that's actually material because that doesn't stand. Yeah, like on the Ethereum aligned thing, like I don't know, like Mihailo can also talk about it, but I'm not sure like you can have many protocols stick their neck out and say that they have done more than Polygon for Ethereum. But still, like, I'm done justifying that. Like Ethereum community, because like, I don't know, maybe many of them OGs, they originally did not. Is it like related to the price? Because by the time they discovered Polygon, the price Polygon was already like at some other level. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, maybe that another reason is that, we strongly believe, like we just, when we launched Polygon POS chain, we had a Plasma implementation onto there also. Thing is, nobody used Plasma integration. Basically, nobody or Plasma in the community level had already died, right? So people ended up using the sidechain piece more, but it was kind of a hybrid blockchain. And that's what we initially argued. Probably, admittedly, we probably argued more. We should not have. We should have simply said, guys, yeah, it's a sidechain. Okay. Like, Ethereum aligned sidechain. Actually, that would have been a better branding. But by the way, like overall, I think narrative, if you ask me, if you are a deep enough industry participant, the biggest criticism for Polygon is that we are super bad at branding, not marketing. Marketing, you would, if I say marketing, people will say, oh, Polygon marketing is the most aggressive marketing or whatever. But that's marketing. But we are super bad at branding and storytelling. Branding is a part of storytelling. And we have never, like, if we had thought enough, we should have actually built that story that, oh, this is a hybrid chain. This is Ethereum aligned. We are like Ethereum passionate people, but we are working towards the layer 2 instead of like, saying like what right now, for example, to take the name, like for example, Optimism right now doesn't have the proof, but they've always been like, they have said that they are going to implement the proof. The story is correct. People know where they are going, right? The intention is there, right? And I think we did not do a good job at that. We should have simply clearly said that, guys, here is what we have built. This is pragmatic, but this is a sister chain to Ethereum. Maybe we should have done that better.
If you don't have haters, you're not doing anything right? So
there's one FUD that I keep hearing, which is that people say Polygon has too many narratives and always jumps onto the latest narrative. I'm sure you've heard that too.
That's a very fair narrative. It's not like we are jumping. I just explained to you that, on Deepin, DeFi, gaming, everywhere, Polygon is in the top 3. And actually, like, for example, this parallelization, we have probably...
No, that's what I was going to ask you. So in December, all these parallelized EVMs, they all went up a lot, and then people started talking about it. And you guys pointed out that you've had parallelized EVM for a very long time. Can you expand on this? What is the architecture difference between your parallel EVM and, like, let's say Monad?
Their parallelization is like maybe because they are building from the scratch, maybe more deeper level. I don't know. Mihailo would have more idea about it, but I think it's very similar.
We generally use similar approach called block STM, and that's what we're using on Polygon POS chain. And we basically expanded on that idea and applied it in the context of the EVM, right? And EVM has completely different kind of architecture, and it's not built with parallelization in mind, right? So there are certain limitations in terms of what you can do, but there are kind of definitely advantages that you can do. And there are other projects that are applying the same principle in the context of the EVM, for example, Monad. And there are definitely quite a bit of things that you can do there. And so far, what we have achieved is more than 100% speed up for when it comes to execution of blocks on Polygon POS chain, which has pretty significant kind of impact on the overall stability and performance of the chain, because execution is one of these time-consuming steps, basically, in the whole process of block production. And Polygon POS chain has been kind of experiencing some sort of reorgs due to the nature of its consensus. And those reorgs, maybe you have noticed if you're kind of following the POS chain, that it's in the recent period, the last 6 to 12 months, it has become much more stable overall. And that is due to a decent extent, I would say, due to parallelization, because the process of execution of the blocks each of the participating validators have to do is much faster now. So
Mihailo, maybe a technical question. The parallel EVM that you have now, how much performance improvement does it offer compared to a single-threaded EVM?
It's basically 100% improvement. So where we are at the moment, we are at 100% improvement. So 2x speed up in terms of actual execution.
So 2x in terms of TPS?
Yes.
Just to end this kind of conversation, Polygon is the front runner, and there's a lot of competitiveness in the space now. And because of that, app rollups, layer 2s are all looking for ways to get adoption, and they're going to come after those that are in the top spot. And you're seeing this in other places too. So even if you look at NFT marketplaces, Magic Eden, OpenSea, Tensor, all very, very, very aggressively competitive. And you're seeing this in other sectors as well.
But in my mind, the Polygon right now has a lot of pieces. I'm actually really confused. I know there's the Polygon proof of stake, which is transitioning into a Validium. There is the Polygon ZK EVM. There's the CDK, and there's the Ag layer, which was recently announced. Can you give me a coherent story of how these things fit together?
So, Qiao, I let Mihailo also explain a little bit technical terms, but from my side, very, very simple. The Polygon is only two things. CDK, which allows you to create chain. It includes the Polygon POS, like Polygon, two of Polygon chains, POS and ZK EVM, and there will be other chains. But that doesn't matter. CDK means chains. And then there is an aggregation layer, which aggregates all the state machines.
What is the Ag layer? How does it work on a technical level? I'd like to hear a technical explanation of how it works.
Aggregation is the way to combine the best out of both approaches. It's the kind of, in our opinion, the next paradigm, the next thesis, how we build Web3 infrastructure, the next evolutionary step. How does it work technically? Now, I know you've been waiting for this moment. So, as we said, in modular approach, we concluded we cannot have a single chain that processes all the transactions in the world if we have global adoption. We need to have these multiple chains. But we have fragmented liquidity, we have pretty bad user experience, we have all the issues with bridging. We can go into that like 4 hours, basically speaking about challenges. Aggregation layer uses ZK technology to unify all these chains. So you can imagine now practically infinite number. You can imagine hundreds or thousands of these layer 2s existing in the Polygon ecosystem. Aggregator layer is a service, decentralized service, that accepts ZK proofs from all the participating chains, aggregates them into one single proof, submits that proof to Ethereum, and from that kind of settlement, aggregated settlement, you get to derive interesting properties in terms of interoperability. You get to turn all these chains into a single practically network. For all practical purposes, for end users, this network feels like all these layer 2s combined are now all of a sudden unified and feel like a single network.
I'm trying to understand Ag layer. Without Ag layer, let's say you have 3 chains. They each post ZK proofs to the Ethereum mainnet independently of each other. But now you have Ag layer, and what you're telling me is the 3 chains, they post proofs, individual proofs to the Ag layer, and the Ag layer combines the proofs into one proof and then posts that to Ethereum mainnet, right?
Yes.
That's my understanding of Ag layer, how it works at a technical level. But my question now is, what is the benefit of doing this?
If you want to withdraw $1 million from chain A to chain B, in the first case scenario where there is no aggregation layer, there is no aggregation, right? What you are doing is the chain 1 withdraws it to Ethereum. As a user, you withdraw $1 million to Ethereum. You wait for 30 minutes because that chain will need 30 minutes minimum to submit to the proof, because on Ethereum, it costs you $50 to $100, right? So you wait for 30 minutes. Now you withdraw to Ethereum and you now deposit into chain B. And now you take it to chain B. But whereas with Ag layer, since these proofs and the global state root is combined, the moment you submit the chain, this chain submits the proof on Ethereum. Let's say right now we are launching the Ag layer, the slower version, which is on Ethereum only. So you still deposit in 30 minutes, but you don't have to exit to Ethereum and pay $200 to withdraw and then deposit, pay $50 to deposit. You directly move from chain A to chain B. Now, this is the slow version. Once it starts becoming faster and faster, you can provide 2-second proofs. You can have this transaction in 5 to 10 seconds. You do some transaction on this chain, it goes, swaps on the other chain, brings the USDT back. In 5 to 10 seconds, you almost have like Ethereum kind of finality time in doing a cross-chain composable transaction across 2 chains.
Follow-up question. What does this mean for bridges? And number 2 is, can existing layer 1s also use the Ag layer as a way to post ZK proofs?
as far as they can post their validity, ZK validity proofs. Like, for example, we have this near protocol, right? We are building the ZK WASM with them. So they will be able to prove their entire near chain. So once they are able to prove, you can actually have a smart contract transaction on near chain, which in one single, like from user's point of view, one single transaction, it initiates one smart contract on near chain, swaps some token, let's say, or does something on the ZK EVM and brings the token back into near. So you have composability across the chains.
But it has to be ZK EVMs, right?
They have to be, no, not EVM. They have to be validity proven. ZK means validity proofs.
Right.
As far as, this is the most powerful thing of the aggregator layer, by the way, that you don't care about the VMs. Like right now, near is WASM VM. Like, for example, we ourselves are building a extremely lightweight VM, Maiden VM, which is going to allow parallel transactions, client-side privacy, so many other things, right? That VM, you can have a private smart contract on that chain, interact with the public smart contract on ZK VM, and now you start feeling the pattern, right? This is how internet is built. Like, nobody is forcing you to host your DeFi Alliance website on a Linux server only. You can host it on Windows server, and somebody can host it on some other server. As far as if we have some RPC connection between two websites, like, because that is trustful, so you each other are trusting each other, but you can have your seamless interaction between two websites.
Sandeep, just to be clear, the composability that you mentioned across these ZK rollups is not atomic, right? Meaning a transaction on chain A cannot change the state on chain B in one block.
Yep.
It's more asynchronous interoperability rather than atomic, correct?
Yes, there are two kinds of composability, synchronous and asynchronous. What I told you is mathematically proven asynchronous composability. Now you talk about synchronous composability. Like, both the chains are providing their proofs in 20 seconds, right? What you could do is within that 20-second window, you can have an optimistic cross-chain atomic transaction, and both chains have to settle. If one of them fails to add that smart contract, that particular kind of the transaction, cross-chain transaction, the other chain can actually show the proof of that sequencer, that the sequencer signed on this message, and this message has not been included in the validity proof. You can slash that. So those chains are trusting each other for that 20-second period because everyone is validity proven. But in no case, any user can lose money. All they can do is for that 20 seconds, they can equivocate a transaction. Basically can say that this transaction happened, but later on don't include it into the block. But they will be heavily slashed.
I want to touch on a related topic, which is the transition of Polygon proof of stake to a Validium. On our last pod, we interviewed Julian from Avo, which is app chain rollup, optimistic rollup that recently started to post the data to Celestia. So they're a Optimium by definition. And by posting data to Celestia instead of Ethereum, they're able to reduce the cost of transactions by almost 99% or if not more. My question for you is, when Polygon POS transitions into a Validium, number one, what kind of cost reduction do you expect? And number two, are you using your own like Polygon branded DA or Celestia or whatever?
I think obviously Mihailo can explain it in very clear terms, but let me give like again a simple example that those 100 validators on Polygon POS are the data availability layer. Like, what is data availability layer? That there is more than like X number of players who actually the block was published to them by the block producer. So those 100 and 105 validators are good enough data availability for this Validium. Like for a Validium like that, actually, if the parties are independent, which is like hard to achieve, but 5 to 10 data availability providers are also good enough. So for POS, we will not need to post the data anywhere else.
Got it. What kind of gas reduction do you expect from this transition?
Because we are not changing our data availability, we already are working on that reduced cost level. Like the cost on Polygon POS chain are already 0.121 cents.
What is the goal of this transition then?
The goal is that right now you have like maybe $4 to $5 billion of user funds on Polygon POS chain that is guarded by those 105 validators. That is not fully secured by Ethereum. That is the like thing where people say that this is not layer 2, this is a side chain. With Validium, once we move it to the ZK validity proofs, then it is no longer in the control of those 105 validators.
You're transitioning the settlement layer from Polygon POS into Ethereum as the settlement layer.
Yes, yes.
So you're more Ethereum aligned after this transition.
It's not for Ethereum alignment. It's basically, actually, this is how it should work. If we want POS chain to have $20 billion liquidity in future, not $4-5 billion, where it is plateaued at a particular place. Like apparently there's like invisible force of like hand of market where the Polygon POS TVL hovers around that $4-5 billion, not TVL, like the total bridge funds hovers around that number. We expect that once it has validity proofs, then big Ethereum whales can also freely deposit because they know that their funds are secured on Ethereum, not of validators of the POS chain.
So is the strategy moving forward to get all the layer 2s to implement the Ag layer? Is that like kind of your core strategy moving forward?
I think aggregation layer is basically a big, like, as I said, that it's about building roads, right? So,
Yeah.
Even if two countries are like, let's say competitive in some form, like having a road together is connectivity road is better for both the parties. And we definitely like are open to working with the, competitors and all that. It changes the mind, like basically the mindset also. Like once we have the product, this product is there. I think it has changed our internal mindset also. Now we don't even look at it in terms of like competition, to be honest. You just want to work collaboratively with everyone else because now we want to provide this aggregation service to all the chains, and the liquidity is, then freely flowing across the chains.
Okay, I want to ask you about the token rebrand. I've seen some talks of Matic rebranding into Pol, P-O-L, on Twitter a few times, being able to find the details. But I'm curious, what else is part of the rebrand? Is there a new utility baked into the token? Is there any new sort of incentive program?
In short, currently, Matic is used as the staking token for the POS chain, Polygon POS chain. So that's kind of the only utility that Matic token has at the moment. So Pol is I would say, completely different paradigm. And we believe also it's kind of a paradigm shift when it comes to native token design. So in that announcement, we identify kind of 3 approaches to create native protocol tokens. The first one are what we call unproductive tokens, which is the concept introduced by Bitcoin. So Bitcoin that doesn't really have meaningful utility apart from paying transaction fees in the network. You cannot do anything with Bitcoin itself. You cannot stake it. You cannot participate any meaningful role in the Bitcoin network, etc. So it's more like a collectible or something that you buy with the intention that its price will go up or whatever. The second generation that we recognize is what we call productive tokens. And for us, like in our opinion, that kind of second generation is started in a meaningful way by Ethereum. So Ether as the native token, you can stake. There's an actual role that you can perform. You can stake Ether, you can participate as validator in securing the network, and you can generate kind of incentives, or if you will, revenue stream, or basically reward for the useful work that you're doing in the ecosystem. So that's kind of that second generation. And Pol is taking that a step further, or a few steps further, if you will. And for us, Pol is what we call a hyper-productive token. So we have these unproductive tokens, productive, and Pol as a hyper-productive token. What does that mean? That means that Polygon, with this set of changes, now have what we call the staking layer. And staking layer is the natively built restaking kind of framework. So similar how there's EigenLayer for Ethereum that allows you to then restake your Ether and maybe validate some other layer 2s or bridges or oracles or whatever. There's this native restaking layer in Polygon now that is being built, and Pol holders can stake Pol in that staking layer basically, and they can subscribe and validate as many chains as they like. So they can validate Polygon POS chain, they can validate zkEVM because it's becoming decentralized in one of the following upgrades. They can participate in the Egg layer itself because Egg layer, again, as I said, eventually is going to be decentralized service that is also operated by Pol validators and any other chain. So there will be chains, right, that don't have their own native tokens or don't want to interact with that kind of staking at all with their kind of ecosystem tokens. They want to use the token for some other purpose. So any chain will be able to leverage basically this decentralized set of Pol validators to run their chain. So long story short, Pol is a very different kind of design and has much kind of more meaningful.
Wait, so Pol is actually almost like a restaking token, and the staker can choose which chain they want to validate.
Exactly. You stake it once.
That's very interesting.
Don't say restaking, otherwise somebody will say we are jumping onto one more narrative. Even though we are building it.
It's already happening. I hear the keyboards already typing.
Yeah. 1.5, 2 years building and designing that. And then somebody will say, oh yeah, they jumped on the restaking bandwagon. Obviously, we have had a very large team. Like you must have seen like recent layoffs also and all that, right?
Oh, you want to talk about that? What is the reason behind the layoff?
Yeah. So I mean, in bull market, we were like 550 people or something, and I think that's not a healthy size for the protocol.
What was your burn rate during the bull market with 500 people?
I think $3-4 million per month kind of burn rate, right? So $2-3 million per month, let's say, on the salaries, right? Or $4 million for the salaries, that becomes like pretty expensive later on. Plus, people have like benefits and all that stuff. So this becomes painful. But that is not the more important factor to do that. The more important factor is to have one cohesive team, because when you have large number of people, it's super hard to create alignment between everyone.
See the long-term competitive landscape. So if you look at Optimism as an example, they have the super chain thesis whereby they allow others to spin up layer 2s and it kind of rolls up within the OP stack. It seems CDK is kind of its own strategy of kind of chains that roll up to the Polygon stack as an example. And you have the aggregated layer, then you have all the incentive alignment through the poll token as an example.
No, actually it's not that, Imran. Like that's why like Polygon Ag layer architecture is different. Like the OP stack architecture is, they're saying we are shared sequencers. You launch the chains inside this shared sequencing pool, right? Whereas Ag layer is saying you are fully sovereign. Have your own sequencer.
Each chain is sovereign, and then you have this Ag layer that can create the composability, right? Asynchronous composability.
And Ag layer is just a service. It's also not like compulsive. Like you can actually launch CDK, directly submit to Ethereum. Don't be a part of Ag layer if you don't want to be.
So yeah, I mean, like with the Ag layer, it does keep Polygon more of a standout like product for developers that are looking for this kind of like seamless integration with other chains. Do you think Optimism is going to go this route? Like, how do you see Optimism moving forward, or even Arbitrum?
No, so like for example, Optimism has already made it very clear that they have this super chain, thesis, and that they're also like having like X number of chains, but there is a limit to how many chains you can have inside the shared sequencing. But when you have that chains inside one chain, like that chain becomes like a very big fat chain which has a lot of throughput, and there might be a lot of economic activity over there. So we have no problem with that, and we feel that an optimistic governance and DAO has also talked about like using ZK proof in the future, and we are like we definitely want to pitch to the community that why not use Polygon ZK proofs, like we can work together on that. Similar way, Arbitrum has recently come up with this permissionless fee sharing model that you can just use. They have the license on the Orbit chains, but you can freely use them as far as you pay 10% back to the DAO. And they're also like many of the Optimism Orbit chains, once the integration is available, they could simply use this service and use ZK proofs for faster exits to Ethereum and things like that.
To me, it seems as if Polygon is shifting from obviously being competitive to other layer 2s and creating this competitive landscape to now being more of a place where people can partner with you, right? So Arbitrum can partner with you, OPSec, Optimism could potentially partner with you. And to me, this seems like a big unlock for the larger community at large, because right now everything is fragmented and it's very competitive. And builders have to figure out where they should build, how, what the stack looks like, etc. But to me, what you guys are introducing is actually something that we're looking for moving forward, which is how do you create this unified experience that creates a better UI UX for end users at the end of the day, which is what's missing in the space. Like going from one bridge to the other is a very big, I think, fragmentation for getting user adoption. As an example, bridging from one asset to another, there's security issues. And I feel like if more and more rollups and layer 2s adopt this unified experience, then at the end of the day, you're creating a more seamless experience. Let's say I have a SVM rollup I understand the Ethereum ecosystem. What about ecosystem outside of Ethereum that want to integrate into this ag layer?
When you say Ethereum, it's not like for us, it's not
EVM,
about
obviously. Yeah.
EVM. Yeah. So VM, like only the alternate VM that is being added currently is Near protocol. Then we have plans to add Move VM, Once that gets added, then that will be there, and then after that you will have there is discussions around obviously like the Maiden VM will be connected, Polygon Maiden, but there are people who are even thinking of seeing how we can add SVM, Solana VM, for example, into this, because in a decentralized network, sometimes as we are saying that there can be outages, but like Solana VM, they have pretty good engineering in terms of optimizing the VM and the throughput. Bridges between okay, so when you have two chains, chain A, chain B, and you have a bridge in between, actually as a user you are going through 3 security zones.
That's
chain
right.
A, chain B, and the bridge, right? Total 3 security zones. Whereas when you have validity proof, the bridge itself is one single security zone. So actually we have some of these bridges who are going to simply use underlying mechanism, because bridges are more like distribution environments to connect, bring users and get them to bridge. So we are there are actually 2-3 bridges who just want to use this underlying validity mechanism. Like for example, you've seen layer 0, they have multiple mechanisms to bridge between chains, right? They're almost like a marketplace, as far as I know, there's Polyhedra and there are other different kind of schemes they use, the proving schemes or security schemes. So they could just add it as one more scheme and use that.
I mean, for the founders that are listening, if you're looking to launch your own rollup, I do think that there's an opportunity to tap into the liquidity and network effects that Polygon's creating with the Ag layer.
Thank you.
I think that's very, very different.
And make sure to use Snapchain, one of our startups in 2 cohorts ago that's working with Polygon to offer an interface for Polygon CDK.
Yeah, they are doing very well. Snapchain is doing very well.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have as well. Any final words?
No, I'm just like Mihailo is going to be so angry. I spoke literally 70% of the time. I didn't allow.
Yeah, I'm literally relieved. Thank you for covering most of the things.
Because we started with the first thing that God fired me up a little bit. So I think I could not put the brakes.
You've been very stressed recently, and I know the roll-up space has been very competitive.
It is very competitive. Yes, I'm losing here very fast.
Who's contributing to what?
In India sometime very soon.
From my side, I'm just very excited really that we are bringing this to life. And I think we're doing, when you put aside the FUD, the narratives, I think Polygon is genuinely in a very good place. We have very healthy, the foundation and labs have very healthy treasury. We as founders are as committed as ever. We are very relevant in terms of adoption in all the sectors that Sandeep mentioned. And what is kind of maybe closest to my heart is that on the tech side, I believe we really didn't compromise. We didn't optimize for short term. We optimized for the long term and for kind of end game, which is really hard to do. And it really costed us a lot of kind of time and funds and nerves and efforts and sleepless nights and whatnot. But we genuinely believe that we now have this kind of end game approach to building globally scalable internet scale, basically Web3 infra, that makes us pretty comfortable. So we're just very excited to share it with the world and really kind of share this value proposition, help people understand, and hopefully join. Let's all together create this seamless network of value.
I think the treasury people is the treasury FUD is I don't understand. People see it can be fairly seen on chain also. Polygon has 1.5B to 2B of treasury. What are you even talking about, right?
What people do is this, okay? I see this happening on Twitter all the time.
In Matic tokens also, Qiao, it's all not USD. It's all most of it is Matic. It's still hundreds of millions in USD. And I don't understand when somebody...
No, Sandeep, trust me. The moment that the price goes up, the whole narrative will change.
Yeah. This is the future. Polygon's the future. Yeah. It's over.
I actually got a ping oh, congratulations on closing the round. I said, what? He said, oh, didn't you close an emergency funding round with Binance round? I said, what? What are you talking about? What are you guys? What are you guys smoking out there? Right? So I this has been through the whole last year. And that is actually because the size, we increased the size and we were optimizing the teams and all that. And I think that created some sort of FUD.
I'll tell you where this FUD started. It started, I mean, obviously, with the larger partnerships is fine. But I think where it really started was with DGods, Frank from DGods. If you remember that FUD. When he left Solana to join Polygon, right?
Yeah. Then you can see who started that FUD.
But, you need FUD. You need people talking about your chain, right? I mean, ultimately, if they're not talking about your chain.
what it does is, like any ecosystem, it kind of takes the disbelievers out, right? Like all the kind of people who don't believe it in enough. And I'm actually happy. I want all of these disbelievers like to be out fully. Like, to be honest.
Well, you want them to cope.
And later cope. Like, so.
All right. So to close it up, to me, it seems as if by moving to Polygon CDK, you're enabling more and more developers to build out their own app chains that have their own sovereignty, but then also able to create the modularity experience that they want. If they want a separate DA layer, if they want a way to tap into other CDKs, they can do that. Then with the Ag layer, you unify these states through ZK proofs that enables some sort of cross-chain composability, asynchronous today, but as close to asynchronous as possible. And with obviously proving times improving over time and the cost improving over time, then you could see this world where you could scale through CDKs and then also ZK proofs as a way to cross-communicate between different rollups, as a way to tap into liquidity, users. And then ultimately, where I see this going is creating this UI UX experience that users don't even know that they're interacting with different apps. Because today, for me, like I have to bridge from one asset to another, and it creates this like very complex experience. I still worry about bridging assets between rollups and etc. And so eliminating all of that through ZK proofs is actually a very interesting strategy. And then I think the goal for you guys is really the network effects of getting more and more people building on the CDKs and integrating with the Ag layer that gives developers access to more and more liquidity that sits on that kind of unified bridge. So that's the goal. I could definitely see people that want to tap into the Polygon POS, now Validium chain, because there's a lot of existing users, liquidity that's sitting there that could be untapped for new developers are looking to build in the Polygon ecosystem. Really appreciate your time, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks again for joining us, Mihailo and Sandeep.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the invite.
That was a great talk with both Mihailo and Sandeep. I've learned a lot. Some of the things that I've learned is that Polygon is shifting away from competing to partnering. And that's fundamentally driven by the Ag layer, which is a unified bridge that can aggregate all of the states and roll it up into a single CDK proof that can enable asynchronous composability. And number two is CDKs, allowing any layer one, layer two to spin up a CDK that works within the Polygon ecosystem.
Imran, can you expand on the first point, the partnership versus competition?
Yeah. The really cool thing about the Ag layer is the fact that, at the end of the day, every layer one, layer two is going through the same issues, which is onboarding users onto crypto. And that's fundamentally driven by the on-ramps, off-ramps, and then being able to bridge between different assets if you want to use different apps. For me today, just earlier today, I had to bridge from Cosmos to Ethereum, and my money's lost somewhere. I don't know where it went. I got to figure it out. But if you wanted to get millions and millions of people to use crypto, they cannot go through this process. So there's a shared problem that every layer one, layer two is battling, which is a UI UX to onboard millions of users. How Polygon's thinking about this is through an aggregated approach, which is why don't we build a unified bridge that aggregates all of the state transitions of all the different layer one, layer twos, at least in EVM today, so that we can roll it up under one ZK proof that will enable some sort of cross communication between the different rollups. This would then give a much richer experience for users that are going from one asset to another or one app to another. They don't have to go bridge. They can, within a minute, be able to bridge their assets to a different chain and be able to do whatever they want on that chain, which creates an order of magnitude better experience. And so where I'm going with this is Polygon can now work with Optimism. They can work with Arbitrum and say, hey, guys, if you use our Ag layer, you could create this unified experience that would enable anyone to cross-compose versus having to do scale through shared sequencers. Because with shared sequencers, obviously, there's a lot of different issues that go along with that. And so they proposed this, which is more of a, hey, let's be friends instead of being foes.
What else did you learn?
I learned that the Polygon token is a single token that can use to validate hundreds of chains within CDK, which is kind of cool.
I'll meme this into existence, which is that Pol is essentially a restaking token for the Polygon ecosystem.
That's right. I feel as if Cosmos should have done this.
With Atom token, right?
Yeah.
They had this vision, but I don't think they really
didn't get approved.
Yeah.
But this could have been a great reason for value accrual for Atom, right?
Yeah. With Polygon, with the new token as a staker, you can choose which of the rollups in the Polygon ecosystem you want to validate and therefore receive tokens or rewards in return.
Yep.
You can stake and secure any network within the Polygon ecosystem. So it's essentially a restaking token.
But you could do many other things, right? You could be restake via validator. You could become a sequencer, as an example, DA layer, etc. So the token has multiple roles within the Polygon ecosystem. To me, like after listening to the FUD, listening to what people are talking about, I don't think anyone really read the latest updates for Polygon. I mean, like just by reading through this and then obviously all the technical documentation and then talking to Sandeep and all of that, I just realized like, I think there's a disconnect of information between what users are seeing.
By the way, no one actually reads the docs. You can't expect any backholder to
Oh, that's right. Because of Jupiter, right? Because no one read the Jupiter.
Yeah, exactly. So much FUD around Jupiter as well. But anyway.
But read the docs.
I don't read the docs. I just interview the people and get the first-hand information from them.
I do both.
Yeah. I learned they have, again, like this is public information. I didn't do the homework, but Sandeep said they have $1.5 billion in the treasury, while many people on Twitter think that Polygon ran out of money and is doing a emergency funding round with Binance, which is absolutely hilarious. They have like 10 figures worth of money in their treasury, and they're burning 8 figures a year, basically infinite runway. And somehow people think they ran out of money. That's also really hilarious.
I mean, even the burn rate when Sandeep talked about was $4 million a month, which to be, straightforward, it's quite a bit, but it's not what people made it seem out to be on Twitter.
Yep.
They were saying $25 million a month or something insanity, some sort of insane number. But to me, it seems okay.
He also talked about how much he spent on Reddit, Nike, Starbucks, all these big partnerships from the last bull market. And the budget for those was also just 8 figures. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not crazy. It seems reasonable to me. And he said that the budget for these partnerships last year was only $2 to $3 million. They're no longer burning much money on this stuff anymore. That goes against the other FUD about Polygon, that people think they spend all this money to pay the big brands to join Polygon. I mean, it's somewhat true, but it's also not like the end of the world, Polygon.
The other thing I learned was how Polygon went from proof of stake to a ZK Validium and how that transition happened and why it's better from a throughput perspective. And then they also implemented parallelization, right?
Okay, so it's two orthogonal things. The transition from POS to Validium, it's less of a big deal than I originally thought. Basically, what they're doing is to transition the settlement layer from the proof of stake chain to Ethereum.
Yeah.
But the DA layer doesn't change. And so ultimately, the transaction fees won't change. Throughput won't change. But there's probably better security by using Ethereum as the settlement layer.
I mean, this was, to be quite frank, there's a lot of FUD around like reorgs and collusion with validators, etc. And I think to solve some of that FUD is to just be more Ethereum aligned.
Yeah.
But I do think with 4844, there is an order of magnitude difference in costs.
The 4844, according to Mihailo, has a meaningful impact to Polygon ZK EVM, not to Validium. Because the Validium doesn't use Ethereum for DA. 4844 impacts the DA layer. So
that's right.
ZK EVM, they think, will experience 1 order of magnitude reduction in fees. Which, by the way, I'm actually skeptical of this because I've talked to many other people, like some of the core protocol developers from Arbitrum, some people who are close with the devs of 4844. They don't think that the reduction in fees post 4844 is 1 order of magnitude. They actually think that 4844 is super marginal when it comes to fee reduction. So I don't know who to trust, but the various data points don't confirm each other.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about parallelization and their move to that.
So parallelization is something they've had for quite a while. I don't know exactly how long, but they said the parallelization improves the throughput by 100%, which again is less than what I would have expected. So in the case of Say or Monad, normally you should expect about an order of magnitude improvement in throughput, not 100%. I'm not sure exactly where is the disconnect, because with parallelization, essentially you should improve your throughput, or at least theoretical max throughput, by the number of cores that you have. So if you have 8 cores, you can do 8 transactions in parallel rather than in sequentially. So I'm not sure why they only see 100% improvement in throughput in Polygon. So the improvement is not as bad expected.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised about that. So there's some founder anecdotes that I've learned throughout my conversation with Sandeep and Mihailo. One is how important a community is to a project and how it could also turn against you.
The token price is a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword.
It's a magnifier of the current sentiment.
It's like a pressure cooker too, right? Because, I mean, look, every founder that I've spoken to that has gone through our program, if they launch a token, that is like how they gauge the health of their narrative, is the way I see it. And if the token price goes down, then that narrative or the health of that narrative also goes down. And that can also affect morality in the company. I mean, this is also true for like, public companies, right? When a stock does really well, the entire company rallies, right? Because they're all vested. They all have vested positions. Similarly, the token acts as the same inhibitor. And what I've realized is, founders have to, at least from my conversation with Sandeep and Mihailo, is the fact that you have to be kind of hard-headed, right? You have to stay focused on your mission, which is to build the best products for the community and to address the FUD as much as you can and try to build what you can. But I've learned that this is a very important part of a founder's journey for those that have released a token.
The other founder lesson I think is super relevant is related to their layoff recently. Yeah. So they laid off 20% of their staff. And the main reason for that is actually not burn rate, but internal alignment. So basically, when you have too big of a team, it's much, much harder to align the team internally in one vision. And this is something we see over and over again with startups. Polygon is obviously a very big startup, 500-person startup. But this lesson we've learned for startups ranging from anywhere from just two co-founders to like companies with thousands of employees like Coinbase, which is that they have to lay people off at some point because they grow too aggressively in the bull market. And the additional burn doesn't actually necessarily increase productivity. This is especially true for early stage startups, especially before product market fit. When you have too big of a team, throwing more manpower and money into solving product market fit doesn't actually necessarily increase your speed of getting there. And in many cases, actually decreases the speed because now you have more people to align, you have more interpersonal relationships to deal with, to manage. So we always tell our founders to stay extremely lean before you have very strong signs of product market fit.
The other thing I learned from their kind of product strategy is the fact that they could have continued to compete with Optimism and Arbitrum, right? It is a very, very competitive space. But they allowed, to me, it seems as if they really thought about the tech and then they thought about how that could be a great go-to-market strategy to offer a differentiated product. And I think that's really important for founders to think about, which is as competitive it might get. Think about ways where you could find a new wedge into the market that's completely differentiated and potentially could turn your competition into customers. And I think that is something that every founder should be thinking about. One of my favorite lines from 0 to 1, Peter Thiel, I'm sure everyone quotes that book, but my favorite quote is like, competition is for losers, right? Like if you keep your lens and if you think about it from that perspective, then you're always going to think about what's the next thing that you could do to outcompete your competitors, which puts you down a very negative path. But if you think about it from a tech perspective, what users want from the general offset, then you could build some differentiated products that could enable your customers, your competition to become customers.
Yeah. I mean, this is especially true for the earlier you are, the truer this is. Because again, this is cliche, but what often kills startups is not murder, it's suicide.
Yeah. And it's just that line of thinking. It's like, don't think about what's happening within the ecosystem, but think about what's happening internally, the health of the company, the people that you hire, the products, the feedback that you're getting from the products, organic growth, customer feedback. Those are the things that matter, not what others are doing, in particular, your competition. Even if you look at the developer report from Electric Capital's developer report, the first one is Ethereum of all the developer growth that's happening. Second one is Polygon.
And it is in agreement with our data. of breakdown of our applications by ecosystems, Polygon is consistently number 2. Polygon is far ahead of all the other layer 2s or even Solana, and people don't realize this.
It's just getting the network effects started with the ag layer, I think.
You know what I realized? I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise, but the Twitter narrative is so different from the real world.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's two different worlds. Twitter is not representative of what developers think, what most users think even. It's more representative of what a handful of influencers think and what the degens think. But degens and influencers are not all the users of crypto. Like, they're, again, like I keep using this example, but crypto has found product market fit in payment. No one is talking about payment because no one cares. Payment is not speculative. It's not.
You're not going to get any points for that.
You're not getting exactly. You're not getting airdrops, and you can't create drama among the influencers. So it's not being talked about in the public square. But it is like the first and the biggest non-speculative PMF that crypto has found. $14 trillion of stablecoin settlement last year.
Yep. And no one wants to talk about that. I think the Twitter narrative is primarily driven by speculative money. It's all speculative money.
So there's basically two types of companies. There's companies that do really good work, but get no good PR on Twitter, which is the case of Polygon, and many others, like payment companies as well. And the other type of companies get a lot of narrative, but don't have much of a product.
I mean, you could say the same thing for Farcaster, right? And the growth of Dan Romero. With Farcaster. You know, I think many people have shitted on Farcaster and called it a Twitter clone, etc. But on its own, naturally, they just kept listening to customers and brought in product improvements that enabled them to build a completely differentiated product compared to Twitter.
Yeah, we should talk about Farcaster on our next pod. I have a lot of thoughts.
Same. So maybe we could do one on ourselves. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.
As always, the views expressed in the Good Game podcast are personal to the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of any other person or entity. Nothing here should be construed or relied upon as investment, legal, tax, or other advice.
Thanks for listening to Good Game. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.